This is Keys to the Shop, Founder Friday edition, and today we're talking with JoEllen Depakakibo, the founder of Pinhole Coffee. Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. So I really hope that you have been enjoying the show. If this is your first time with us on Keys to the Shop, welcome. Always fun to see kind of the global audience that is the Keys to the Shop audience. It's amazing just what the reach podcasts have. I really hope that this show has been inspirational for you and has helped you in your career or your cafe. Thank you for listening. And if this is your first time with Keys to the Shop, thank you for joining us. I hope that this is a great episode and valuable to you in your career in coffee. So, and I have no doubt that it's going to be, because we're talking with someone who I think is very inspirational and just love the vibe and the mission that JoEllen brings to the table here with her company, Pinhole Coffee. So you're in for a treat with this conversation. Now, before we get started, I do want to thank our sponsors here at Keys to the Shop, starting with Prima Coffee. So Prima Coffee is a specialty coffee equipment supplier, and they're based out of Louisville, Kentucky. Now, when they started their company, they set out to make the best coffee brewing equipment available to the general public, and they've certainly accomplished that goal. And their focus is basically to curate the best equipment for every need that you can have. So they carry things like grinders, espresso machines, under-counter refrigeration, a ton more just to set up your home bar or your coffee bar. Your commercial equipment needs and your home needs are all met at prima-coffee.com. And when you visit their website, definitely make sure that you check out the resources that they give you to help you use the equipment as best as it can be used. They really put a big emphasis on having the expertise that helps their customers get the right gear to fit every situation they run into. So I really vouch for these guys. I know them well, and I love their business. So prima-coffee.com. Check them out. And when you do check out from Prima Coffee, if you fill out the survey, let them know that Keys to the Shop sent you. So thank you, Prima, for your support of Keys to the Shop. Also, I want to thank our sponsor, Pacific Foods, the folks behind the Pacific Barista Series line of non-dairy performance beverages. They are designed specifically for professional baristas and the standards for excellence that they demand. So whether it's almond, soy, coconut, or rice, and now oat milk is the new one, the SCA Expo Best New Product winner, by the way. Their alternative milk's ability to take the heat of steaming, produce an unmatched silky texture, and keep the flavor balance focused on coffee, it makes it a perfect choice for your cafe's menu. So Pacific is just a huge supporter of specialty coffee, and they demonstrate that by actually listening to and serving the needs of real specialty coffee professionals. So go to pacificfoods.com and learn more about the Barista Series line of non-dairy beverages and how they can help elevate your cafe's non-dairy game. So we are talking with the one and only JoEllen Depakakibo, who is the founder of Pinhole Coffee in San Francisco. JoEllen has had a long history and a ton of accomplishments in coffee. Now, she worked in Intelligentsia Coffee as a barista, then on to Blue Bottle Coffee for 8 years as a barista, then a retail manager, and she helped open cafes in both the Bay Area and New York. She founded Pinhole Coffee, and it is turning 4 years old this year. JoEllen's shop has been voted Best of the Bay 2016 by the San Francisco Bay Guardian, and has been making just a really big impact on the community and providing a space that is warm, comforting, I would say is disarming, and functions as a outlet, a community hub. All of those things that I just said, I feel are what you evoke in what gets evoked in your mind when you think about coffee shops, especially the way that coffee shops have functioned in society for so long, which is why I'm so excited to talk to JoEllen today, because I feel like at Pinhole, they've tapped into a sort of the primal need, if you will, of the third space coffee shop, which is that place where community happens, that place where you kind of serve the needs of those who come to you in an unpretentious way. So in this conversation, we talk about JoEllen's beginnings in coffee, some of the lessons that she learned early on, how some of those things translate into the success that she has with Pinhole Coffee, and some of the challenges along the way as well. Of course, No Founder Friday would be complete without stories about challenges and also advice that she has for those of us who want to open coffee bars and really kind of dial it into that community level to be a place where the community can gather and be a warm, hospitable, and inviting place. Now, she has some wisdom to share with us in this episode. So let me get you right to this episode. I'm excited for you to listen in to my conversation with JoEllen Depakakibo of Pinhole Coffee. JoEllen, welcome to Keys to the Shop. I'm really happy to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I've heard just rave reviews about your cafe, and that it's a very unique and a take on coffee, and the cafe setting is just so intimate and warm, and something I just definitely want to explore in this conversation. You've been doing coffee for 16 years now, right?
Mm-hmm. Something like that.
Yeah, it's a long time. How did you get into coffee? This is kind of the quintessential question, but like, what attracted you into the cafe business? And then for 16 years now, you've just been in it. So what got you into it?
Well, I remember in high school, and my creative writing teacher had us start a paper with "I want," like really strong "I want." And I remember writing, "I want a coffee house filled with couches and a stage for poets and musicians," something like that. So I was definitely attracted to a setting and the types of people that setting brought. And my first coffee job was at Barnes & Noble in college, and it was just really poor management. I wasn't really taught how to make coffee. I remember customers would be like, "Can that other barista make my coffee for me?" And this is in Chicago, so I didn't last that long there. But Intelligentsia, a small company back then, was hiring, and I used to study in their space a lot. So I just applied and started working with them. So I was just starting to learn, the basics of with different processes and the different origins, things like that.
So that kind of got you into the specialty side.
Exactly. At the beginning of that. But what attracted to me more was just the setting.
Is that something you've always been had an affinity for? Is the atmosphere of a space and how you resonate with it, or how it makes you feel?
Yeah, I think I was just curious with the different creative types and the urban folks and things like that. So there's just something that pulled me into that direction.
And so over the course of time, you got, your chops in making coffee, and you actually helped open a few cafes. What was that experience like?
Yeah, then I moved to San Francisco and helped Blue Bottle, another small business called Blue Bottle. So I was able to help them open locations in the Bay Area and in New York. And that was, it helped create a foundation for me for what I would do for the future.
And during this time that you're working for Intelligentsia and Blue Bottle, and you're kind of absorbing the skills, and the different stores have different feels, of course. In this time, were you sort of taking notes because you had this strong "I want" to open your own coffee bar? Was this kind of something you would make notes about and plan for the future?
Later on, my later years with Blue Bottle, when they moved me to New York, I definitely was taking more notes and starting a business plan and injecting my knowledge of what I was learning into that, and doing pros and cons of, things that I thought didn't work as well with flow and things like that, and kind of counterbalancing it with what I think would work better. And kind of envisioning, the future for me.
So all the experiences that you had just leading the teams of people and affecting those types of atmospheres in those shops, there must have been a season of time where you felt like you weren't ready to open a coffee bar. And I guess I'm curious about, because a lot of people get to that place where they have a lot of experience. I mean, after about 8 years of doing coffee, somebody could open a coffee bar, right?
Yeah.
What was it that was sort of in your mind as not a roadblock, but sort of like maybe not yet?
I was looking for spaces just on Craigslist, I think 8 years ago, thinking that I could probably do something. And then I would meet with the landlords and things like that, just kind of with a basic idea. And then they would ask me all these other questions and I would just be like, I'm not too sure. And they told me how much rent would be and things like that. So I just didn't have anything, as organized to present. So that would kind of, deter me from continuing. Mm-hmm. I was trying to do everything on my own, basically.
Did that stop at some point?
Yeah, definitely. I had my idea for such a long time that I would just share my idea with people. A lot of the customers and things like that would come by just saying, eventually this is something I'd want to do, not with the intention of asking for, partners or anything like that. But I think just being open about it with people brought my business partners on board.
Nice. That's a great lesson. I mean, I feel like you could have maybe incubated that idea for a much longer time and sort of kept it to yourself, and maybe it never would have happened. Wouldn't have had Pinhole.
Yeah. I mean, what happened was, because I was living in San Francisco since 2006, and I had the idea that I'd move back to Chicago where my family is and things like that and open there. So just one day I woke up in San Francisco and I said, in a year from now, I'm going to move back to Chicago. Mm-hmm. And that year approached, and I got in a relationship in San Francisco in that meantime. But that year approached and I ended up moving. And that was a big lesson that I learned, because I moved not really wanting to. And I got to Chicago, looked at some places, thinking I was going to open there. But my heart wasn't in that anymore. I wanted to move back to San Francisco again. And I knew that
your heart was in San Francisco.
Yeah, my heart was in San Francisco. But that was a huge lesson that I learned, that I can't force anything. I can't force anything. I can't predict too far in the future either.
So when you got back to what you knew to be true inside you, basically, you took on business partners who kind of resonated also with that idea that you had, and the, what it was that you wanted to accomplish with your shop. Was it kind of nerve-wracking to take on investors and business partners?
I feel very fortunate that the folks that are my business partners, Bob Rosner and Rick Holmstrom, they really support me and they trust a lot with me. And they're just very communicative with things. So it was pretty direct what our roles would be. So it wasn't nerve-wracking for me because I knew them and they were friends of mine. I know there are situations with other folks that get involved with their friends and it doesn't work out as well. But I feel like we all just kind of strengthen each other.
Oh,
so awesome. I think it's the communication definitely helps.
The communication, just having a good rapport with one another.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. Certainly, I feel like there must be a lot of people out there who maybe regret they didn't have much of a relationship or know the heart of the individual that they were kind of wedding themselves to, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, I think it's definitely helpful to be direct with each other and just lay out everything in the beginning.
I want to talk about what it is that you're trying to accomplish with Pinhole. Like, what is the vision for Pinhole Coffee? And then along the way, maybe tell us where the name comes from. It's a super interesting name.
Well, I remember in my business class, I took classes at the Renaissance Entrepreneur Center in San Francisco, and they just help people that want to start their own business. But we talked about elevator pitches. And I remember in class, I was trying to figure it out, and I wrote stimulating senses with coffee, art, and conversation. So that's what I wrote, 8 years before I actually opened. But then when determining our mission statement for my staff, I came up with to serve quality products in a hospitable environment that enriches the community. So both intentions, those years apart, they're still parallel to enriching a human being. So I think that's the core for us.
Nice. So you're plugged into your community, and I know from what I've seen of the shop that it's kind of a conduit for the expression of your community.
Yeah, and it's such a great neighborhood we're in, Bernal Heights.
Bernal Heights. Okay.
Yeah, Bernal Heights.
I saw pictures of kids' song time.
Yes, yeah. Wednesdays, a grandfather comes in, Marty. He plays music for the kiddos.
This is an interesting thing to me because in specialty coffee, you've worked for shops probably like this where there's a minimal design element that's super popular right now. There's sort of a push to make the experience of coffee in a store somewhat transactional in nature, pretty simple, and there's not a lot of margin for the messiness that community often brings. Did you have these values in part as a response to some of that you saw in the industry? Did you kind of feel a need for something a little bit more approachable and warm?
It was just something that naturally came to me. I learned a lot in places that I worked about hospitality and seeing the fruits of hospitality, just that interaction with a human being and just that positivity is just something that is a core value for me. Yeah, it was just something that naturally just happened. I just feel like it just became kind of a vortex of a space. So it just attracted these positive folks that would just ask, can I play music for kids on this day? And of course, I would just say yes, just because it was such a positive thing,
This sounds amazing. It almost sounds that like there's a lot of shops, call them bohemian, call them sort of trying to channel the beat poet era of coffee shops or whatever, which is appropriate since you're in San Francisco. And there's this element of performance and just, rubbing elbows with your neighbors that does seem to be something that people want more, maybe because it's not as available, at least not with excellent coffee, which is kind of cool. So when you got the place open, like when you set out to get the space done, how did that go? What kind of challenges did you face in getting Pinhole to that open point?
Well, first we kind of got backlash in the very beginning, just when it was announced that a coffee shop was going to be put in.
Oh.
So I think Bernal Heights, it's such a protected community. So I think people were just kind of fearful about these new younger folks coming in and opening up another coffee shop in the neighborhood. So there's a blog called Bernal Wood. It's just an online blog. So it was announced that we were opening, and just the comments I couldn't read anymore. It was just like another coffee shop, gentrification.
No.
If they only knew that, I am a woman of color, bringing more color to the neighborhood. So I just had to stop reading that. And just when we were building out, I was just doing kind of meet and greets and doing coffee pop-ups just to meet the neighborhood. Because I just feel like, you just have to talk to someone to understand their intention. So that was one hurdle that I had to get over. It was just to have an understanding with the community.
Did that work pretty well? Like
it did.
Meet and greet and sort of demystifying or taking the fear out of JoEllen, that scary JoEllen is coming to Bernal.
No, definitely. I feel like, going again with that positivity, it's that human connection and having that kind of magnetic connection with another human being.
Mm-hmm.
So from then on, I just wasn't worried because I was staying true to my own intention. And when you stay true to that, then the fruits of that will happen. So I was trying not to get distracted by just people that, didn't really know what they were talking about. Just wanted to rant.
Had you experienced that with other shop openings that you had been involved with?
Yeah, definitely. And, Blue Bottle expanded really fast. And that was something that we would deal with opening in different neighborhoods and things like that.
On the subject of sort of what you've experienced is in other contexts before Pinhole, how did your experience in coffee prepare you to be able to enter into being a business owner? And then I guess the second part of that question is, was it sort of a shocking transition to go from employee to owner?
What I've learned from my experiences is that, I worked a lot with management and managing managers. So having those one-on-one meetings with folks, you kind of learn just kind of the psychology of things. And that helped me with opening up my own thing.
So tell us more about the that managing managers part in the psychology of management or leadership. How specifically has that part been helpful to you as an owner of this business?
It's helped me just lead a team of people and just having a structure of the form and function of a space. And that's really helped a lot with the flow. We are producing a really great product, but at the same time, we have to balance that with how do we show hospitality to people. So finding that balance, moving the line along, but still being friendly while still handing out a quality product. There is a kind of dance and performance to that. So that comes with structure. And I think the experiences in my past has allowed for that.
Would you say it gives you freedom to have that structure?
Yeah, definitely. It gives me, room to move and just a nice, fresh breath of air.
I feel like a lot of people who want to put a lot of cups out, just make ends
just
meet.
Bust it out.
Yeah, especially in a place like San Francisco, I imagine it's, of course, it's a high-priced place to live and have a business. But you also want that hospitality. So it seems like this tension between efficient, transactional versus hospitable, interaction. So those systems help you balance that a little bit. Is there, within those systems, what kind of communication do you find yourself just regularly engaging with employees in the day-to-day when things are pretty hard to overcome to try to reach that ideal?
Well, what's great is I actually have a retail manager in place now. Their name is Alec, and I put them in place in their position last year. And what kind of forced me to do that was I was getting married. And so, but since I let go of my position a little bit more and Alec is there to help me, we meet on a weekly basis just to talk about structure and things like that. And one of the core things that we talk about is just touching base with our staff on a regular basis. So we both work on bar, consistently, and we do constant check-ins with them. And I think strengthening that foundation has kind of prevented us from running into issues. And the communication's just open,
Yeah, so people can talk to you, talk to the manager anytime.
Yeah, we hope so. We hope that they feel comfortable to come to us.
Yeah, it's like that power. There's a power gap, being just who you are as an owner and or a manager, and anybody who's any position above you, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. And, even in my management, in other companies and things like that, I always thought it was important that we would have at least one bar shift or, I still have a lot of bar shifts, but I enjoy that because you're actually in the action of it. It's kind of like you're in the same position as your coworkers. So that's where the respect comes from because they feel aligned with you. It's not you just micromanaging or just staying behind the curtain saying time to lean, time to clean, you're actually you're ringing up people, putting out the cups and, making mistakes too. I think it's important that when a manager or owner makes a mistake that it's defined and not just hidden. So.
That's great. I feel like that's a healthy and probably the ideal way to go about things.
Yeah.
It brings up a question, I think, that we still need to be, because there's a leadership aspect, there is a following aspect. And therefore, there's always going to be this tension of sort of, we don't want to have people be subservient or have this kind of relationship, but at the same time, they kind of have to do things a certain way. Describe to us what it looks like in terms of making sure that everything is getting done, communicating the checklists and procedures and policies, things like that. How do you balance being a approachable boss? How does your manager, Alec, approach being an approachable boss while at the same time having to put your foot down sometimes?
Again, I feel like the check-ins have definitely been helpful in order to do those things because they do gain that respect for you. So if we have to tell them to do something, they have that respect already. And it's not an awkward thing to approach our staff, if we want something done. It's going back to what the intention of the duty is. And for me, it's just, an easy thing. If the intention's not being accomplished, then we just have to do this in order to fulfill that.
Mm-hmm. In a place like yours, I imagine it's more a family-ish feel where people are kind of close to one another. Would that be fair to say? Oh my gosh, yeah. I think that goes with just my specific way of hiring people. Oh, yeah. Let's talk about that. Because you have to steward this, you've delegated so much responsibility to Alec, and they're figuring out how to just manifest this ideal daily. So are the staff. And so what are the priorities you look for when, bringing somebody in to represent Pinhole? Yeah. So in college, I was a communications major. And with that, I learned to understand reading people in their silence and in their talk. And I'm definitely very blessed with an amazing staff I've seen become this family with each other. And so when I interview people, what I try to sense in an interview are folks' their humbleness, kindness, and willingness to learn. So it's not necessarily their coffee background. Currently, 8 out of the 11 of us that work did not have prior coffee experience. Okay. So it was definitely their personalities what made me hire them. And kind of just like seeing the big picture, seeing them when I'm in an interview, just seeing how they would interact with my staff and how that energy would be. So I feel like we've been overall pretty successful with that. Nice. So you look for that humility, the kindness, and the ability to learn. And then you said how they would interact with your staff. It sounds like you put a lot of effort into serving and giving hospitality to your staff. And that bleeds over. It sounds like kind of a Danny Meyer concept of his book, Setting the Table. He talks about like our main priority is to make sure the staff are taken care of and then the customer can be taken care of too. Does that resonate with kind of what you're about? Yeah, definitely. I really love Danny Meyer too. You made me really hungry. Sorry.
the foundation. We have our mission statement, which is the foundation, which is about hospitality to our customers, but it's also hospitality to our staff. But the staff is the core. They kind of help me with the form and function of our space and the flow. So I definitely feel like it's important to cater to our staff first and kind of transfer to them your expectations in order for those expectations to move into the whole space, to our customers, to the environment. It's been really amazing to see a team work together like that.
And they're all after the same thing. You've done a good job of getting them all on board to a particular vision, but giving them freedom within your shop to express hospitality their way. Mm-hmm. Is that something that you employ? It kind of sounds like it.
Yeah, if it's just a positive thing, it's really great to see their different personalities come out. But if it's a positive thing, then of course they could do it in their own way. That freedom always feels good for an individual. The type of music that they play and so on and so forth. There's some of my baristas that are really, really good with the kids. And then the other baristas are really, really good with the dogs. So there's a balance, there's a character that they add to our space.
Yeah, both types of kids, right?
Mm-hmm. Both types of kids, exactly. There's some baristas that know how to deal with that type of kid.
Yeah.
A little bit better than others. So
when I look at a good team and when I look at a shop like yours and those who have really dialed in their process, it doesn't happen automatically, and sometimes you have to sort of turn people away, or you have to make a decision about somebody moving on. I hope that's not the case in your history so far, but have you had to sort of break ties with somebody, and what is it that causes that and makes you think, okay, I really have to, unfortunately, move this person on, but also kind of do it with grace?
Yeah. It doesn't happen often. In my whole career, of course, there's been a lot of times where I had to fire people, sadly. But at Pinhole, there was only one incident, and that was he just didn't show up. So that was definitely hard because he was part of the family and he got along with everyone just all of a sudden. So of course that didn't feel good, but I had to let him go, of course. Cause that was a big deal. It was on a Sunday morning, no show. So, with other incidences, we give another chance, but that was pretty dramatic.
What are you risking if you don't act on that? Like when you keep them on and give them a second chance in something that severe?
I think it's like psychology of having a child or a dog or whatever. That when you let that just pass, that they just feel like they could do it again when it's that drastic.
Imagine it sends a weird message to the rest of the staff who showed up too.
Yeah, and that's true too. Yeah.
So in all this discussion of the atmosphere and your philosophy on service and hospitality and serving your community and everything else, all this meaning, this kind of rich meaning. I love the story, by the way. There's the weaving of your strong I want in school to today, where you kind of preside over this realization of a dream, really. So naming a cafe is really one of the things that people sweat about. Go through sheets and sheets of paper. How did you arrive at Pinhole?
So I remember one of my friends giving me the best advice that you want to pick a name that you don't mind hearing 1,000,000 times a day, which is so true. Pinhole is everywhere for me, and on clothes and I'm walking down the street and people just say Pinhole. So it's definitely true. So and then another friend was like, let's just write down things that you like, just words on a paper, and then go from there. So I'm definitely a photography fan. And so Pinhole is a photography term. It's the basis of photography. And I chose this name because it's symbolic to taking something small like a pinhole. And it, that hole being exposed to a light source, in this case for the cafe, customers, employees, the product, the environment, and it producing something lasting. So it's kind of a symbolic thing to that. So in photography, that final thing is an image. So that's where Pinhole comes from.
Wow. I love that. So far, it's been almost 4 years now since you've had Pinhole. And what have been the most rewarding parts about owning and running your shop?
Definitely the human connection and lasting relationships, beyond me and beyond us, my staff. We've seen other customers become good friends. Sometimes we see people talk across the room saying, I've seen you walk the dog in the neighborhood for the last 13 years. What's your name? So it's having a space where people could actually just talk to each other has been amazing. We don't have Wi-Fi. Our seats are in a certain way where you're kind of forced to face each other.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really have backs against each other. So that was on purpose. And I think, just we're in 2018 now, and it's so different now from before when I used to go to coffee shops in high school and college. Everyone's usually on their phones or something. So it's amazing to see a space actually force a community.
And it works.
Yeah, and it works. It's not aggressive and not, too forceful.
Mm-hmm.
You can still be on your phones and things like that. But I've just seen it naturally, people making eye contact and just saying, hey.
What?
Yeah. So that's probably the biggest reward for me. That's what I wake up and just being grateful for. It's just that relationship with people.
That's
and
excellent.
Just people being resources for each other. I see people just talking and then they're like, hey, do you want to work on a project with me or something like that? Or, sometimes we need a drill or something like that. And a neighbor would come and drop us off one.
Oh, wow.
Our immersion blender would break down and a customer will bring us one. So it's just I feel like that's the meaning of life for me, is just being resources for each other. And I'm seeing that constantly in this space.
Awesome. So now I want to know if you have some advice for people who are on their road to ownership or owning a cafe that want to serve their community well, kind of do a similar thing that you're doing and spread that concept around, but also, be a thriving and solid, successful business. What would you tell them to kind of focus on and put into action?
I think the most important thing is defining your intention and on a daily basis, remind yourself of that intention. So, we're like 4 years open now, and I still try and remember what my intention is, just to keep me on track, so I that definitely helps me. Also, you can't do everything by yourself in a sustainable way. I mean, people can do things on their own, but it will definitely wear them out. So I think it's always good to ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
So I just noticed myself, my life got less stressful when I was able to delegate things to others, and it gave me more room to think. And I definitely saw the fruits of that, where I was able to do more, and just feel like we propelled even further. So I think those are my main advice.
Nice. What is next for Pinhole?
We are just a small little humble space, but I'm meeting with my architect tomorrow to talk about getting a parklet in front to help us expand a little bit more. And, I live in Oakland now. I got priced out of San Francisco myself.
Oh, no.
So I commute. But we've been looking over here, too, to hopefully make another community space in Oakland. So I'm constantly looking for spaces. But, I always say go with the flow. So we'll see. I'm happy right now just being able to put my energy into this space in Bernal. It really is a special neighborhood. It's just a really strong community that I really believe in.
Excellent. I just really appreciate your philosophy on coffee and the things you're doing there at Pinhole. And the more of that you can manifest in the world, I feel like the better.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate you taking time to kind of share and inspire us with your story. What can we do to stay in contact with Pinhole and what you're doing to stay up to date?
You could go on our website at www.pinholecoffee.com. And we're also on Instagram and Facebook.
Nice. And we'll definitely link to those in the show notes. JoEllen, thank you so much for taking time to be here. This was really inspiring. I love this.
Oh, thanks, Chris.
So after this conversation, I just truly felt inspired. Like I said in the beginning of this episode, JoEllen represents to me something that I want to see personally. I want to see some more shops like this in the world, because it speaks to this need we have as people to belong, a need to have our needs met, to be in a place where we can let our guard down and, be served, and also give us an opportunity to serve others. I love the idea of, having somebody playing guitar for kids, and they're giving opportunity to serve through art and different activities like that. This just seems like a healthy and thriving concept that if we have more of this in specialty coffee, I guarantee you I'm not going to complain. I would love to see this example just spread. So my thanks to JoEllen for talking with us about her experiences opening Pinhole Coffee, and we are the wiser and more inspired for having gotten to hear your story, JoEllen. So thank you very much. And if you want the show notes for this episode, you can go to keystotheshop.com, where on the side of the homepage you can find a place to enter your email. And when you do, you'll be on a list to receive the show notes sent to your inbox every week. It's basically the key insights from every episode, along with links to resources and other things that will help you sort of absorb the information and put it to use in your career, in your cafe. That's the whole point of this show, is to give you these pieces of information from across the industry and other things from outside the industry too, that will help you become better and to do better and affect change. So go to keystotheshop.com, enter your email. That's all it takes. And then if you want to reach out to me, you can do so by emailing chris@keystotheshop.com. And you can also reach me by phone, 502-715-1465. If you're interested in Keys to the Shop consulting, helping train your staff in your leadership, management, you can reach out to me those ways as well. So that's it for today's episode. Thank you again for joining me. I hope that this was inspirational and that you took away something of value that you can put into practice in your life, in your shop, or your future shop, as it were. And of course, as always, I hope that this episode has given you keys to the shop.